When I was quite young, I met my teacher, and he gave me this book. It was the autobiography of a yogi, a Paramahansa Yogananda. He was one of the first yogis to come to the United States. Him and Vivekananda, I believe, were the first ones to come over. And when I read this book, I was absolutely enthralled, absolutely amazed at the immense possibility of life. And if you read the autobiography of a yogi, how many people have? Yeah, it's pretty thick, but it's just full, just like story after story after story of miracles and the powers of the Siddha yogis, and just how they could manifest things and bilocate and heal sicknesses, and it's just amazing to read. And he kind of toured around a little bit and visited different yogis, and met his guru, and it's just absolutely extraordinary. And for me, I was just, I was a Midwest kid, really a kid from Kentucky. And, I came out to Colorado, and I was given this book, and I was just like, wow, like this is so utterly incredible. Like, I want this as a life. And my teacher, this was before really the internet, and where you could just get any book at any moment, but my teacher had, a little library in his house, and I would just devour these books. And so I just would read story after story about, whatever great yogi it was. And as I was reading these stories, I started to unconsciously have this thought or this judgment toward myself that I need to be like this. I need to be like this great one. And again, it was so inspiring from one sense, but after many years and being celibate and failing and trying to live this like rigorous, austere spiritual life, like all the yogis in the book, like they were all pure. None of them had a shadow. None of them had an ounce of sexuality in them. None of them ever told a lie. Yogananda made like one mistake in his life. He picked up a BB gun. I don't know who it was. Someone gave him a BB gun or something, and he was aiming at the target, and a bird flew in front of the target, and he pulled the trigger, and he killed the bird. And from then on, it's like he never sinned again. And again, it was just like, from one perspective, like I think that's just how they wrote the books, in the olden days, And so I just had this idea, okay, I have to live, this perfect life. The problem was, like, I was just like a walking hot mess. I could be tip-top, top-notch. I could be well-behaved in the presence of my teacher. And I was with my teacher a lot, like, 40, 60 hours a week I spent with my teacher for many, many years. I worked for him for 2 decades, so I had just a lot of time with him. But I kept realizing I can't pull this off in the world. I'm really struggling to pull this off in the world. And we use this this term in the modern age. It's kind of like a trauma therapy word. This is my safe space. The trust tree, like we're in the safe space, and this is my safe space was with my teacher on the land. And I was good there, but just in my daily life, not so good. Not so good. I was some trouble. And I've always been, I've always had a real wild side, just, growing up on a skateboard and just loved jumping off things, and I love just to, cause a little chaos. So anyways, one of the things that happened through reading, just hundreds of books, and still I have a bookshelf just loaded with books, but then I just have piles and piles of books, in my house, in my storage shed, just all these spiritual books I've read. And the word the Buddha used for this is conditioning. So I conditioned myself a certain way, but just like with any conditioning, at some point conditioning can become indoctrination. And I can even remember, my little girl, she went to Catholic school for most of her life. Just this last year, we had to pull her out of there because it wasn't working so well. But and hanging out with my wife works at the Catholic preschool, but I've been to a lot of the meetings, and sometimes in the meetings and in the literature they talk about the duty of the school to indoctrinate, and I was like, wow, they're really printing that. They're publishing that. I always thought indoctrination was a bad thing, but it's one of the visions, the views of the church. This place here that we're in, it would take young men and indoctrinate them into the rules, the ideology, the philosophy, the orientation of the church. And again, I'm not going to argue with it too much, but just acknowledging that I indoctrinated myself. And this is one of the things that we do on the spiritual path is, we indoctrinate ourselves to this is how we are supposed to be. We're supposed to speak in soft, sweet tones. We're not supposed to use profanity. We're supposed to follow all these rules and this and that, and we're supposed to dress a certain way. We're supposed to walk a certain way. And if you ever hang out, one of the places I hang out sometimes is Christ in the Desert. It's this beautiful monastery. This teeny little place in New Mexico called Abacu. It's really just out in the desert because it's on the Chama River. Maybe almost an hour down a really bumpy, rough, almost four-wheel drive road on the Chama River, and it's just beautiful. But when we're there, I can see, okay, these monks, they're living in a state that's it's very peaceful and beautiful and serene, but it's also, highly indoctrinated. They're this is how I'm supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to be, and it creates, of course, a microculture there, a microculture. And again, if we're going to be a monk, it's a great place to be, great place to be. Anyway, so there was just this strong vibe of this is how you're supposed to be. And at some point I realized, just looking inside, I have all these rules about my life and how it should be and how it should not be. Now at some point I met another teacher, Adyashanti, many of you know him, and one of his core teachings is about if we want to be free, there's a lot of things we need to unknow. A lot of things we need to unlearn. And that was incredibly powerful and incredibly healing for me. To be with this different type of teacher who was constantly offering this invitation to let go of all these beliefs. And so for me, I had to do this big detox of letting go of all these spiritual rules. And what I found was these spiritual rules, in a sense, were, like, often they were highly judgmental, highly controlling. They were saying life needs to be a certain way. And in a sense, they were looking out at the world and saying, the world is wrong. The world is wrong. And if we look out at the world and we have a view that the world is wrong, well, we're going to live in a really divided way. Like when I was a young monk, I had this thought. I mean, it's hilarious. I'm just going to say it out loud. But I didn't really have this thought, but it was more just this feeling that, and again, this will be like a horrific thought, but there should not be women. How about that? How about that for a thought? It's like, the reason I had this thought, because if there weren't women, there would be no, sexual desire within me. It's just it's a problem solved, huh? Problem solved. Now, again, it's a ridiculous thought, but this is what happens when we're indoctrinated. And whether we're indoctrinated in religious belief, political belief, in, like, with communism, like once upon a time I was a communist, that's a fun one. And, there shouldn't be capitalism. Capitalism is wrong. If you're a Democrat, Donald Trump should not exist. If we're a Republican, it's Kamala Harris shouldn't exist, or Joe Biden shouldn't exist. Like, they're wrong. They're wrong. Earlier this year, I saw this wonderful video of, it was like Obama and like George Bush and like the Clintons, like all hanging out, like laughing and telling jokes. And I was like, what the hell's going on here, guys? Like, I thought you all hated each other. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? We're supposed to all hate each other? They were laughing and joking, and smiling, and they showed another way, at least for, a temporary moment in history. But anyways, so when I met Adya, one of the greatest gifts he gave me was this invitation to unknow, to empty out. And of course, it didn't stop with spirituality. Like spirituality, like a lot of that stuff that I let go of, it became a great relief. A great relief to let go of all these rules, this ideology. And my God, like, I love women. I have just nothing but girls in my life. Like, my house, just all these girls. There's so much feminine energy. I mean, I teach a feminine path, the path of the Divine Mother. And so it's like, yeah, please, let's let go of all that nonsense.